Oh, yes. Now, I'm just looking at this whole concept of sign the form. Yes. If you don't have the signature of the petitioner, yes. You don't have actually the state court seal or the forgery of the ex officio individual employed as a clerk. Yes. Who was it that decided to give this court order to the third party that didn't have any legal right? Now, if Heidi didn't sign it, yes, she didn't acknowledge it and she didn't get a copy of it. What individuals took it upon themselves to involve some other person, yeah, other than a person that the petitioner actually wanted to have the involvement of? Obviously, I didn't get notice, and there's still a big question about was I there or wasn't I there, coach? But I wouldn't have given it to somebody then, well, why don't you serve me? What fucking dick took it upon themselves to take a court order issued by Clallam County, yes, hand it off to some other person without the acknowledgement of the petitioner, without the respondent knowing, and thought, well, we can just fuck this guy over. I mean, we don't have any legal obligation to protect the identities of those named as parties and the minors included on a court order that should only be for the specific purpose of protecting their safety. Coach. Now, I want you to understand, Sheriff, I'm going to sue you. And I told you that I wanted my sons. Now, I said, remove the protection order, and you wouldn't do it. Okay? You wouldn't do it. Well, whomever that person is, I can't see that the petitioner gave her authority for it to happen. And since I'm the respondent, I obviously didn't give my consent to being served by the person. So what person in law enforcement decided that they would do whatever the fuck they want because they didn't have the authority of the laws of the United States to do that? Now, when I look at this whole sign the bottom of the form, yes. Now it says here, unless the respondent or the respondent's lawyer was present at the hearing, this order must be served on the respondent. Pooch. I haven't looked at the instructions for dissolution of marriage. Yes. But I would think there'd be the same instructions that unless the respondent or the respondent's lawyer was there during the dissolution, the dissolution of marriage order must be served on the respondent. Now, what individual, okay, let's just look at it. You had a non-jury trial where this morning I mentioned, yes, that you received back, yes, mail returned unclaimed, yes, mail returned unclaimed. Now, I'm thinking that the instructions for dissolution of marriage are very similar to the instructions for the issuance of a protection order. Yes. And since there is no signature of the petitioner, I don't see how she would have been contacted and said, well, who do you want to have served this? But I mean, she would have acknowledged it and then she would have taken it to the sheriff's department. The sheriffs would have done what it says. But you didn't. You waited until I was in Sequim, Washington. 2 weeks later, you gave it to somebody that I don't know the identity of. Heidi might know who the person is, but did he have any legal right? Is there a reason why you didn't arrest him? For violating my privacy, the safety of myself and my 5 sons, because he had to make a show, did he? Does anybody know where he is? Because the court did not order service by a third. Well, let's say, you is a dissolution of marriage? Yes. And does it have one of these service of the dissolution of marriage orders on it? Does it have one of those? Now, somebody didn't want to pay for service of the dissolution of marriage because it's not free. You arrested me at the same moment as serving me. Yes. And then we went through about the whole motion hearing with Commissioner William Kniebs. Yes. Is that one of those settlement conference setting hearings? No, it's a motion hearing. Yeah. Um, did I get notice of that? Sheriff's return of service. No, this is the protection order. Oh, that was a protection order that Judge Kniebs issued for 1 year when I was in a jury trial. Yes. Why don't we call Judge William G. Kniebs and ask himself, well, was it? Or why don't you remove it, you fucking dick? Okay. Now, let's go over to the dissolution. This was what we were looking at in the declaration of Jessica Hodges and the parenting plan. And then there was the notice of the hearing. Yes. And then the hearing that you did or did not have. Then a confidential report. Yes. Declaration of mailings. Yes. 9/25 of 2012. Yeah. And then the mail returned unclaimed. I don't remember getting that. Yes. Temporary order. Yes, yes, yes. Exactly. Where did that mail go on 9/25 of 2012? Is there any address on that mail? Because a lot of times these dissolutions of marriage, especially when you issue them because of a domestic violence protection order, they sometimes have domestic violence protections in them. Yes, they do. There's no possible way that you did include an actual copy of the protection order with the dissolution, did you? As if, well, we don't know where he's at. He's homeless. He's mentally deranged. And we're going to have these conference setting hearings, and then we're not going to give him notice of court hearings. And then we're not actually going to fill out the proof of service that he actually got it, and we're going to give custody of his sons to his spouse. And we're just going to send it in the mail, but the mail was returned unclaimed, and we're going to let the petitioner do what she wants. Yes, we're going to decree a dissolution, and then there's not going to be any actual proof of service because whatever the fuck it is that you filled out during the dissolution of marriage. It's now the year 2018, August of 2018. You're still planning on serving me after 5 years, or you thought, well, we'll just put him in jail for not paying child support. I just wanted to know, in the dissolution of marriage itself, just considering these instructions of the service of the order, yes. Is there anything about law enforcement involvement or the protection order or how mean I was as a father or how I was a domestic abuser as a husband? I mean, is there anything in it? Because I haven't actually looked at the forms. But considering you filed the dissolution of marriage because of the issuance of the protection order, yes, in 2011, and because of the arrest that happened on May 28th of 2012, yes, and because you reissued the protection order in 2012, Judge Kniebs, yes, is there any possibility that this dissolution of marriage actually violates numerous laws because of you issuing court orders where there was no notice to me before court hearings, the use of a minute order to reissue it, the finding of myself not guilty of violating it, and then your refusal. Now, why don't you give me, in the dissolution of marriage, what are the actual instructions for the service of the order of dissolution? Because it seemed like some judges, some cops, and some sheriffs thought, well, fuck the guy. Now there's a question, okay? A question. I told you about coercion as being an influence. Yes, but there's a word that I found, the coercive, as in your influence to not do what the law says, has caused me an immense amount of pain and suffering. Yes, yes, yes. Has denied my sons a father. Yep. And then for some reason you don't find it coercion. Oh, now you're sitting there laughing about this coercion that you're using. Oh, here it is. Criminal coercion intended to restrict another's freedom of action by threatening to commit a criminal act against that person. Yeah. Threatening to accuse a person of having committed a criminal act and threatening to expose the secret of the other with some victim is to hatred and contempt or ridicule, impair the victim's credit or goodwill. Now, why do I feel like I'm the victim of criminal coercion?